My name is Jerome Ferry. My cameraman is Alan Eggers. We're doing a video interview with Jane McLeod, a former school teacher in the city of Rapidian for many years. Jane, tell us where and when you were born, what year you were born in?
I was born February 19th, 1919 at Cedar Rapids.
Mm-hmm.
My mother came from Minnesota to have me here in Cedar Rapids where she'd have help.
Mm-hmm. What was your parents' names?
Richard Ashby Rawl, Dorothy Livesey Rawl.
Mm-hmm. And what was their did you have any brothers and sisters? Excuse me.
I had one brother, Richard Ashby Rawl Jr.
Mm-hmm. And what was your dad's occupation?
He had sales occupations mostly, and he had to go to northern Minnesota for his health. He was threatened with TB, and the doctor had said he needs to live outdoors, and that's what he did, 2 miles from the Canadian border at Crane Lake, Minnesota. And then, of course, that was not any sales except at the Indian trading post he had.
Mm-hmm.
Then later he went to Duluth for a year selling coffee. And then he came to Cedar Rapids to sell stocks and bonds.
Well, we're going too far.
Mm-hmm.
When your mother, when it was time for you to be born, she come back to Cedar Rapids, or they come back to Cedar Rapids?
Yes, she came to Cedar Rapids just to have me in civilization.
She didn't feel comfortably in the North Woods having a baby.
Absolutely not.
So after you were born then, you went back.
Right back.
And is that where you were raised? Was
yes.
At Crane Lake?
That's right.
That must have been quite an experience for a young person to grow up in the wilds on a beautiful lake.
It certainly was.
Was it a resort area?
It is now, of course. Nelson's Resort is there at our very own house, you know. But in those days, my father had just 2 log cabins. That was the resort.
I imagine it was quite rustic compared to what you would expect nowadays.
No water, no electricity. Imagine it.
And did you have any schooling up there?
None, because I would have had to cross the lake to a one-room schoolhouse. And that's nigh impossible in the wintertime up there, 30 below zero.
So then, when did you come back to Cedar Rapids? Did your family come back?
We stayed at Crane Lake until I was 6 years old. Because of the school situation, we moved to Duluth, and that's where my father had the sales job. And we stayed there 1 year, and I went to Salter School for kindergarten. After that 1 year, we came to Cedar Rapids, but my father stayed another year in Duluth to accumulate some savings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So where did you go to school then when you come back to Cedar Rapids?
When my brother and I and mother came back, we lived with our grandparents, my father's parents, the J.F. Rawls, and I went to Polk School, Cedar Rapids, where my father had attended. And that was 1 year. My father then came from Duluth, and he and my mother bought a home on 24th Street across from St. Matthew's Church. And we lived there for about 3 years, I judge, and I went to Arthur's grade school. And then we moved to the Country Club Heights, 26th Street Drive, across from the Country Club golf practice green.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to go into your childhood a little bit and growing up in early Cedar Rapids, because you were 6 years old, 7 years old when you come back. I can imagine you'd probably to somebody that was older, that would be quite a culture shock, being born and raised in the timber and then coming out to the city. But being as young as you were, that probably didn't bother you that much, did
No,
it?
it was fun.
Oh, I'll bet. So many exciting things that instead of the chipmunks and the squirrels and the when you were a young girl, did you get to go to the movies? And
Well, times were rather hard after we got back to my grandparents. Before that, I did get to see an occasional movie, but we weren't a family to do that. We were more for sports, for swimming, tennis.
How about trains? Did you ever get to take a train ride out of Cedar Rapids at the old Union Station, or?
I did. From that 24th Street home I mentioned a little while ago, my girlfriend, who lived right next door to us, moved to St. Louis. And that first summer they were there, they had me come for a whole month's visit. I took the Burlington train. Burlington was a prominent part of the name. And all by myself, of course. And I remember eating in the diner. How exciting that was. I think they had finger bowls. And, of course, I'd never seen those before. And we got to, I alone got to St. Louis, and that whole month was the hottest month I had ever seen up to that time. And I had new patent leather shoes, and those were so hot in that heat.
Any memories of the old Hunter Airport?
Before we go to that, my friend and I went a whole day's trip on a real paddle wheel steamboat. The two girls of us alone.
Where was this?
At St. Louis. Just imagine it. I shudder to think we had the time of our lives.
I can imagine.
On the Mississippi.
It was a real paddle boat.
Real one.
Real one. I asked you, did you have any memories of the old Hunter Airport?
I had my first plane trip in an open cockpit plane with my mother in the back seat. The pilot, Diane Hunter, sat in front. We had helmets on, and as I remember, I had just summery clothes because it was a hot day, the 4th of July. I nearly froze. And the noise was so tremendous that you couldn't talk to each other sitting in the same seat.
How about early newspapers? Do you remember newspaper boys on the streets hollering, extra, extra?
I certainly do. When Charles Lindbergh flew the Atlantic and landed in Paris, I think the headline was, Lindbergh lands in Paris. And it was out from where the new Hy-Vee store is right now, that this newsboy was right across First Avenue, standing and kind of walking along there and yelling, extra, extra.
How about early radios? Did you have a radio when you were?
At Crane Lake, we had what they called a radio.
Did you have any stations to listen to, though?
No, I think it was sort of an experiment. It had a great big horn thing on it, too. I remember that, and static. I never really remember hearing anything on it otherwise.
How about parks in Cedar Rapids? Did you get a chance to go to the parks like Beaver Park or Ellis Park?
My two aunties, my grandmother's maiden sisters, they never married, were very fond of children, and took all the young children in the family on picnics to Beaver Park or Ellis Park. We always had balloons. That was the signature for party.
How about circuses? Any memories of circuses in the...
I had an uncle who came one year, and we went down very early in the morning to see the parade down First Avenue. Oh, what a parade that was. And then we got to go to the big tent and watch the circus. And of course, I thought the Highline trapeze performers were just doing something too dangerous.
Do you remember where that circus was held?
I don't. I really don't. It just seemed like it was out almost in the country, you know.
Yeah.
Some field.
Campfire. Was you active in the Campfire Girls?
Very active. Through the Congregational Church, First Congregational Church. Noel Newell was our guardian. And I went all the way through and took the highest ranked torchbearers 3 times, enjoying all the different crafts that you concentrate on, and went to the first camping year of Camp Otaga. And I remember the party. I happened to get in on the party the camp gave for all the people who had worked on the camp. And it was quite a nice evening.
You don't recall who spearheaded that Camp Otaga project, who helped found that?
Oh, there were some well-known people.
I was thinking of a Mr. Northcott, but I think that was the Camp Wapsie Y.
It does not ring a bell.
Okay. YWCA, was you active in that?
No. I can't remember anything with the Y.
As a young child, okay. Wintertime, what did you do to entertain yourself? Did you ice skate?
Yes. And, you know, we didn't have any real rinks, so except for Manhattan, it was called now, and it's Dennis skating rink. And we had to take the trolley to Ellis Park, and it was sort of across from Sheftick's boathouse. That white building is still standing.
Yes, it is.
That the trolley stopped. Then we had to walk up to Manhattan to skate.
Did you ever skate at the Bruce Moore?
Yes, I had friends. They were classmates too. Robert Eby, Bob Eby, Moore Eby's coach, co-college coach Moore Eby's son, and Howard Cherry of Cherry Burrell, and Ed White, whose father worked at
Bruce Moore?
Bruce Moore, yes. And that is, of course, the way we got to skate on the pond at Bruce Moore.
Who was living at the Bruce Moore at that time? Would have been the Douglases?
Yes, yes.
Is skating something that you did most of your young life? Did you ice skate quite a bit?
Well, quite a bit, but not a lot. And after we were married, after the war, and settled at J Avenue Northwest, we skated, took the whole family after supper almost every night, and skated at the Roosevelt rink, which was the flooded field that now has a grade school on it. But at that time it had lights, and they kept it beautifully for skating. And they even had some of the city races there.
Did you ever get involved with the silver skates?
Well, my husband
Frank?
Very often helped with timing and judging, anything they needed at the track.
Were you familiar with the Trimble family at that time?
Very much so.
O.C.
They lived across the street from us.
Really, O.C. Trimble?
Yes.
Yeah. They were devoted, or not devoted, but they were very enthusiastic about skating.
Oh, they absolutely were. And O.C. Trimble today is still skating. He had a hip replacement operation, you know, and since then he's been able to skate again. And he won that championship that they had, I think, maybe at West Allis, Wisconsin. I think it was about 2 years ago now. That he, in the senior group.
Senior division. Christmases when you were young. Do you remember? Did you have fun Christmases? Was there any special memory stuck out in your mind? Was Christmas a happy time at your house? Or?
Yes, it was. And my husband's parents, of course, came from Traer, close by, and then his brother and family of 2 children came from Rockford, Illinois. So we had quite a house full at that little house on J Avenue.
Did you remember when you was a little girl any special Christmas gifts you got at Christmas time?
I had an uncle living in Pittsburgh. He was a wealthy man. He had Pittsburgh piping there, a steel business, and he always gave us a $5 gold piece for Christmas, and that was just like $1 million now.
Did you save them or spend them?
I think I usually saved them unless I needed new shoes or something like that. It was always something necessary if I did spend it.
Did you ever think back now that you wished you could have had to save one of those coins and still have it today, a $5 gold piece?
I know, but I think I might have put it in the bank to get interest. I wish I could remember what the interest was.
Do you remember your mother or grandmother taking you downtown to the stores, especially around Christmas time when they maybe had them all decorated? Does any memory stick out in your mind?
About the only memory really of shopping was buying material at Kramer's store downtown Cedar Rapids. They were well stocked with sewing materials, and I can remember the first time I had a real silk dress that we bought the material there.
Do you remember the Killian store or the Armstrong store, the way they decorated them at Christmas time with all the beautiful displays in the windows? Does that
It doesn't
stir a memory?
It doesn't stir too much memory.
Okay.
Not like my grandfather doing all the Christmas tree trimming himself. He was pure German, and a Christmas tree was everything to him.
And it had to be just so.
Absolutely.
Were your folks church-going people?
They certainly were. They were pillars of the of the church. I can remember when that first Congregational church was built, because I had to go to the First Pres Church down across from Green Square to Sunday school until the new church was finished. So I can remember way back that far.
Did she work, your mother?
Yes, she did, and she worked at Killian's. And I don't even know what department she worked in.
Did she get an education?
No, her parents were Watchtower Bible, religious people, and in fact, my mother's brother-in-law was a minister, a pastor in that religious sect, and they did not believe in girls having any education beyond 8th grade. And she told me she begged and pleaded and everything to get to go to high school, but she didn't. when they were divorced, my mother and father were divorced, she didn't have any education, you see, for that. She went to a quickie business college above Iowa Theater here. And in just a few months' time, she learned this quick ABC shorthand. I taught Greg. My grandmother had the old style, like Pittman shorthand. There were three generations of us. But she learned all this typing and all of that in order to be a secretary to Senator Hickenlooper.
Was he a senator at that time?
Yes.
How did she happen to get that job?
Well, I said she was at that time. I'm not sure that he was. Isn't that funny? At the moment.
Well, that's okay. It's just the fact that
it might have been between terms, and she thought he would be governor of Iowa someday.
Did your grandmother try to have any influence on you as far as the Watchtower religion?
You mean my grandmother in Moline, Illinois?
Yeah. The one that belonged to the Watchtower religion?
They gave me a lot of books that were of that sect, but they made no impression upon me. And of course, my mother was an absolute rebel. You know, she did not believe in that religion.
I have a note here. You had mentioned the fact that she was a secretary to Senator Hickenlooper. But then I had Lippisch.
Yes, after that she became, I think he became a senator again or something. And so she became Dr. Lippisch's secretary. And she really loved that. Yeah. But I don't know how she could pick up all the education she had, but she learned from watching and listening all the time. And later on, would we be talking about what she did?
Yes.
Later on. But anyway, she enjoyed that so much.
The Depression, in the depth of the Depression, you were probably about 14 years old. Did this hurt your dad? Do you recall?
Well, the crash of 1929 certainly.
29, 30, that
certainly
time period in it.
was a very, very climactic thing for me.
Your family.
Because our family just dissolved, divorced. We went from the country club life back to the very simple middle class life of my grandparents, and I of course didn't get to keep up with all of my friends in the country club area.
Did your dad lose his business?
Oh yes, and he went to Maine. He worked there.
At that time, is that when you went to live with your grandparents?
Yes, that's when.
And your granddad was who?
J.F. Rawl,
Julius?
better known as Fred.
His name was Julius, was that?
Julius Frederick Rawl.
And they lived where?
They lived on 17th Street, second place off First Avenue.
This picture that Alan is picking up on now, the small one to the right, that is where you and your mother lived with your grandfather?
That's right.
The Rawls?
Yes.
And the big home is what? Is one that he had built?
That's an apartment building, and it was a 4-apartment building. The attic was all finished off with nice floors and plastered walls and windows, and that was to furnish each one of the 4 apartments with an upstairs storage room.
And this was at the corner of?
17th Street and 1st Avenue Northeast.
And did he live in this larger home at one time?
Yes, the last years of their lives, they lived in that
lower right-hand apartment, I think you told me.
And then when my grandmother became a widow, she lived at the other lower apartment where her 2 sisters lived.
What's sitting on this site today?
The Iowa the eye clinic.
What was, you said, what name did he go by? I was going to say Julius, but he went by...
Fred.
Fred, he went by Fred. What was his occupation in Cedar Rapids?
He was a printer of lodge books, Raw Printing Company, and he was Justice of the Peace and mayor.
And, he was mayor for multiple terms, wasn't he?
4 terms.
He must have been a well-liked man.
Yes, he had many friends.
What time period would this have been?
1918 was his first term. Through, let's see, 18 to 20. Then the next term, 20 to 22. Then he lost the election in 22, was back 24 to 26, lost out a second time at 26, but won again in 28 to 30.
In your grandmother's name, I don't know if we met. Yes.
Her name was Flora.
Did she did she work outside of the home?
No, but she volunteered. She led the sewing, had charge of sewing at the Bender Community House.
Okay. Was that any with the Bender pool?
Well, of course, there was no pool.
No,
This was
but
when
was
they
that
first
the same?
started.
Was that the same group?
Well, yeah, definitely.
Later,
It was the
later they built
community house.
Mhm.
And she helped the poor women rip up garments and make other garments out of that old material. And I heard her say one day, "Oh, if we just had some new material."
Was your grandfather? Did he have a auto?
Never had a car in his life.
He served-
walked or took the trolley. And once in a while, for something very special, of course, it could be a taxi. But they walked a lot.
Was his office at City Hall?
Yes.
Did he ever take you down there to show?
No, actually not. Actually not.
You have a newspaper clipping here dated 1924. I'd just like to have you read it real quickly. I think it's very nice.
All right.
You could.
This was in 1924, March 7th. Former Cedar Rapids Mayor J.F. Rawle threw his hat back into the ring for mayor, making a primary runoff almost certain. Incumbent Mayor Charles Houston and former vaudeville star Effie Cherry had previously announced their bid for the office. The Gazette said Cherry's candidacy had added considerable spice to the campaign.
Did you and your mother have separate quarters in their home, or?
No, we shared a bedroom upstairs.
Did you enjoy living with your grandparents?
Very much so.
Were they the fun type people?
Yes, they were, and we could have a bridge game at the drop of a hat. They loved bridge.
Did they entertain a lot?
Yes, my grandmother actually did, because she belonged to different groups, especially PEO, and she would have luncheons and, of course, family dinners. She often invited co-students for Sunday dinner if they were, alone. And when her boys were in school especially, she tried to entertain some of the lonely co-people.
Were they church-going people then?
Oh yes, very much so. And one of my biggest memories is my grandmother in charge of the church suppers. And in those days, they charged about 40 cents for a dinner. And how they ever got the food together to have a dinner. I don't know. But I can remember how much they worked on those church suppers to make some money for the church.
You had mentioned the PEO. I know you're not going to tell me, but anyway, what was the PEO?
My grandfather always said that it meant Papa's Evening Out. And I think he was true to that, because he always had lodge meetings and things like that.
This was a ladies'
Organization.
kind of a secret club, and you never did reveal to anybody what PEO
of course
actually
not.
stood for.
Of course not.
You have a photograph here of must be your grandmother.
Oh,
She must have
yes.
been a member. You want to turn that around and hold it for Alan? She must have been a
Yes.
member for quite a few years. How old would she have been? She is the lady holding the
Book
book.
for This Is Your Life. And she was initiated by a founder of PEO. And she was a founder of DK chapter, I think, in Cedar Rapids. And then she later belonged to IH.
Jane, let's get you into high school. Where did you go to high school?
I went to Old Washington High on the railroad tracks.
Any special memories about old Washington?
Oh, we just thought it was a wonderful school. We went to the old Adams grade school, I think, annexed to the high school for many of our classes. I had geometry there, I had English there, and we girls went to the YWCA for our gym work.
Phys ed?
And there was a tennis court there then, and I got to play tennis.
Could you afford to ride the trolley, or did you have to walk?
Well, I walked from 17th Street and 1st Avenue down to past 3rd Avenue to get to Washington, and 1 block further to the annex for my first period in the day. Came back at noon. Went home at noon on the trolley, and then walked back to class. Obviously, we had a long lunch hour. There were no cafeterias in school, so everybody had to fend for himself for lunch.
Did you and your girlfriends ever slip downtown during the lunch hour?
We never stayed down.
No, during your lunch hour. You always went home for lunch.
We always went home and never had a ride except the trolley one way, and then we walked back very fast.
You remember any of your classmates that were close to you?
Oh, yes. Yes, indeed. Helen Simmons lived right next door. Elizabeth Kensinger lived very close to Central Park Presbyterian Church. Sarah Engeldahl lived right across the street from me, and she was campfire guardian, and I was her assistant at the Central Park Church our senior year. Ann Miller was on 19th Street and B Avenue. I usually walked up B Avenue to Franklin, and her father was with the Gazette, and Winifred Murray's dad was a dentist. I walked right by her house, and sometimes she would be coming out and we'd walk together. Yeah. We had a lot of people going to school and walking.
Did you notice, Frank, she didn't mention any boys' names?
No.
That's right.
Was you active in school activities?
Yes. I'm trying. At Old Washington, you see, I didn't say that I went to Old Washington 2 years. Then I had to go back to Franklin, where I went to junior high, to graduate my senior year.
Oh.
And that year, all the activities were just done. But down at the old school, Washington, I was in the Girls Athletic Association. We played big basketball tournaments that were just intramural. We never played another city or anything like that, but we had more fun. And when we were juniors, we were able to officiate at the basketball games and gain Girls Athletic Association points.
At that time, the girls weren't allowed to play schools outside of
That's right. The Cedar Rapids system was not allowing it.
The football players were the jocks.
Yes, but that was too rough for women.
Was that the time when football was number one priority as far as Washington High School was concerned? They recruited students from other schools in the Cedar Rapids area?
Nothing like that.
Yeah.
We had a few school dances. It danced in the hallways mostly, I think. And we had our newspaper and the annual, of course. And I imagine there might have been a science club. I didn't belong to it, but it just seems to me as though there might have been a science club.
Did you get involved in any plays?
I never did at Washington. I tried out for one in Franklin and never made the grade.
Were you, at this time, still active in the campfires and Camp Pataga? And were you kind of
very active all through junior high, and when I went back that senior year to Franklin, you see, that was close to Central Park Church. That year, you see, I was assistant guardian.
Mm-hmm. What level did you reach in the campfires? Did they have different levels you could achieve or work your way up to?
I think I mentioned that I got to I took torchbearers 3 times.
Okay, very good. Back in the days when you were a senior, did they have proms back then like they do nowadays?
Our senior graduation prom, and we had a wonderful 9th grade graduation from Franklin. Went down to Washington for 2 years, came back to Franklin for our high school graduation dance and banquet. And really, it wasn't anything compared to our 9th grade one.
Did you have a date at your prom at Washington?
Yes, and I'm not even sure who it was.
That was my next question. Okay. Okay, when you were a senior at Washington, in the back of your mind, had you
at Franklin.
At Franklin. Mm-hmm. Had you been mulling over in your head what you were going to do when you graduated? Did you have any idea if you wanted to go on to college or could afford to go on to college?
All the time I had that in mind, to go to college.
So did you go on to college then?
Oh, yes, definitely.
And so what year did you graduate from high school?
36.
36. And then at college, what year did you?
40.
1940. And you went to?
Cole College.
Yeah. And what did you major in?
I had a double major, commerce and finance and French.
Mm-hmm. And what was, did you have any idea at that time what you may want to do with your life? Was you going to work or get married or what?
Oh, definitely.
Your ambition.
Definitely. I planned to be a secretary or a business teacher. Remember, you couldn't buy a job in those days. So I had to be as prepared as I could be. And I took business in high school so that I could be working summers to get my money for college. Mm-hmm. And then I was secretary to Dr. Hickok at Cole for 3 years. And I worked in the registrar's office typing grades. We typed all the grades out, Mm-hmm. And I typed, and then I worked there one whole summer also, instead of any other kind of job. I worked at Metropolitan Supply for 3 summers.
You mentioned Dr. Hickok. Would that have been Roby Kessler's dad?
Yes, it certainly was.
Did you know Roby at the time?
Yes, and Mary Ann.
Mary Ann.
Her niece. You see, Mary Ann's mother had died, Roby's sister. And so the Hickoks really took over with Mary Ann. And so sometimes Dr. Hickok took her down in the afternoon to the office to Coe College, you know. And once in a while, he gave me a ride home. And Mary Ann was in the car.
Who was some of your other close classmates that you remained friends with after?
Well, Winifred Murray, Kelly is her married name, and she's a widow now. And I belonged to Alpha Gamma Delta sorority, so I had a lot of close friends.
And you had a lot of social functions.
Lots of dances, and the fraternities. My husband belonged to Delta Phi Epsilon, and they had dances, and our Alpha Gam dances. Then there were college dances.
Were you active in sports at Cole?
Yes. As a freshman, I was. I lost in the semifinals of the tennis, that 1936-37 year. And I got my senior Red Cross life-saving badge that freshman year. We had to learn in the bathtub pool, we called it the bathtub, in Voorhees Hall. And of course that pool is no longer there, it's covered over. But that was the only thing we could swim in, because remember, the only inside pool in Cedar Rapids at that time was at the YMCA. Yeah. And that's where we had to go to pass our test.
Did you ever have the pleasure of knowing a Mr. Art Schwartzentruber that years later headed up building the natatorium, they called it, in later years at Coe College?
I just knew of him. He wouldn't remember me at all.
He was older. He was older than you were, 5 years maybe older than you were. Did you know a George Henry, the photographer at Coe College?
Well, of course, he was a little bit later too, but I've known him because of the Coe.
Taking pictures of every function around.
That's right. But he really wasn't taking pictures at the time that, for instance, I was in swimming classes. Now they have a picture of me climbing out of the pool that they use in the Coe literature from the early days or the earlier days of Coe. They often have that picture. And Beulah Gundling is in that picture, and she was the one who more or less started synchronized swimming.
Did you know a Mr. Bill Whipple?
Yes. He graduated before I did, but I knew who he was. And of course now we see him all the time. And we saw him at Co-Homecoming this year.
Mm-hmm. So what year did you graduate from Coe?
1940.
1940. And had you met a boyfriend yet?
Oh, yes.
Serious one?
Yes. My sophomore year. He would have been actually a junior because he went to Appalachian State Teachers in North Carolina and Ames. When he transferred credits from Ames to Coe, they wouldn't accept some of those Ames, not liberal arts courses, you know. So he didn't have really enough to be a junior, so he was in the sophomore classes pretty much, and we were in all I think we were in all the business classes together. Business law, statistics.
What was so when you got out of college, your first job, Did you decide by that time what you were going to look for a job in, what profession?
Well, I had to look for teaching. That's the only thing that seemed to be around, and even that was difficult. I had applications in clear over to Janesville, Wisconsin, I remember. It was really, and it was quite late in the summer, middle of the summer at least, wasn't it? Before we got any feedback.
What was you looking for? Grade school, high school teaching,
high school
teaching?
Because of commercial
So
business courses.
Where did you find your first job then?
Kellogg, right by Newton, and Kellogg had the 1-minute washing machine up to just a few years before I started teaching. An all steel equip company was at Kellogg at that time, and they had a bank. It's just a small town, but they had those two businesses, and my advanced business students got to work at those two places for half a semester, a quarter, and learn the business machines that they had then. Very limited, of course. And there were 4 students in that advanced class, and they all got a government savings bond, a $25 one, I think it was. At the end of their work, they weren't supposed to have any pay at all, but they had done such a good job, I guess, that they were rewarded with that. So I felt very good about that. I thought that was really something nice.
What did you get paid your first job?
$110 a month for 9 months, $990 a year.
And did you consider that quite a comfortable salary?
No, I considered it very low. You had to pay your room rent. I can't even remember what it was now. And eat in the restaurant. Remember that? Eat in the restaurant. There were 2 restaurants and one served liquor, so a teacher could not go inside the door. Didn't matter if you never touched a drop, you couldn't go in the door when you were a teacher there. And they served their dinners at night. The one I had to go to served them at noon. So I was teaching business law or commercial arithmetic, something like those courses, right after lunch.
At that time, a lot of the other school teachers that we had talked to and interviewed and got their stories, they all mentioned that when they got married, they had to quit teaching.
Right.
Was there such a stipulation then?
Right.
You were aware of this?
Yes, and when we went to Clarinda, Iowa, I immediately put in my credentials to the Page County Superintendent of Schools for teaching, filling in anytime they needed a substitute teacher. But Pearl Harbor came along before I ever got a chance to work.
Yeah. Had you married? You and Frank got married yet before Pearl Harbor?
Oh yes, in June.
You
June
got
15th.
41.
Yes.
And then Pearl Harbor come along in December.
That's right.
And that turned your whole life around.
Yes, and we had gone to Glidden in September for school starting, and he had a chance to go to Clarinda the 1st of November, I think we had to be there, and at a higher salary, you see. So he paid a $50 breaking the contract fee to go to Clarinda. We had to move our little modest furniture to Clarinda.
In a stock truck.
In a stock truck. And then we had to stay in a rented room for a whole month and wait for a little 2-bedroom bungalow to be available to rent at $25 a month. We hung up the last picture on Sunday, December 7th. Sat down and we were eating dinner and we turned on the radio and there was Pearl Harbor. He was a reserve officer. We knew he would be called in immediately. So he had to report February 9th to Atascadero, California.
Frank, we'll give your wife a little rest here and we'll pick up on you. You were in Cole College, graduated from Cole College. Were you with the ROTC at Cole College?
Yes.
Were you aware of the program that was at the Hunter Airport training pilots at that time?
I was not. I did not know that.
Did you ever, or did you ever hear, they never asked you if you wanted to be a pilot?
No,
Yeah.
never did.
Yeah.
We went to Fort Snelling to get our training. I feel I was very fortunate that I was able to get ROTC because it's a lot better to go in the Army as a second Louis
Foot soldier.
than a first private.
Yeah.
And but
What campaign were you in over there? Was it Pacific?
it was in Patton's Third Army.
Mm-hmm.
But there was an interesting thing happened when I reported out to California. I really was green. And I had a platoon sergeant who was a real nice fella, and I said to him, I said, "Sergeant, I don't know a damn thing. Will you help me?" And he said, "Yes." But by the time I left, I was able to recommend him for officers candidate school, and so I did get a chance to pay him back. But he certainly did help me.
They changed a lot of the procedures.
So when you got called up and you went to California, did your wife follow you then and
Yes.
moved out there?
We drove out there in a 1936 Plymouth.
Did you find any trouble? Did you have any trouble finding housing out there? That
I
We
really,
rented that house.
I really can't remember if we had any.
We rented that
We
house.
were able to
I
find
think
a place.
Bob probably had that house all
But,
figured out.
Bob,
At the time that we were out there, the Japanese had these small submarines that were giving problems along the coast. And we weren't able to enjoy weekends or anything because they wouldn't let you close to the water.
you weren't given leave probably. And that your wife had mentioned that you rented a house from one of the Hawk brothers.
With Bob Hawk and his wife, we joined hands and rented the place, but really we weren't there very long until they moved me down to Fort Benning, Georgia to motor maintenance school, and I ended up as a regimental transportation officer for 95th Infantry Division.
Where did you end up overseas then?
Well, most of our action was France. We're in Belgium. We got in the Battle of the Bulge, and at that time we were in Patton's Third Army all the time,
Yeah.
really.
You had mentioned the fact to me earlier that you had the opportunity to meet your wife's uncle, Raul. Was it an uncle?
But that was in
Oh.
training.
Janie's uncle was a full colonel, and I was a second lieutenant out in California Desert Maneuvers.
Was it Stephen? Was his name?
No, Staten.
Staten. Raul.
And lo and behold, one day the Fort Colonel was looking for Lieutenant McLeod, and they wondered what kind of a pull I had, and he was a fine gentleman, and we enjoyed being around him a lot. And my mother and dad even followed me down in south, and we got together once with them.
And it wasn't that San Antonio.
Yeah.
Where were you when the war ended, Frank?
I was in the States. I'm trying to think how many days it was, but dear old President Truman saved me from going to Japan. All our equipment was marked, and we were ready to ship. I think, how many days was it, Janie?
2 weeks.
2 weeks, and we were headed for Japan. So I'm a Republican, but I'll declare that I think that President Truman will go down as one of the best presidents we ever had. He didn't pass a buck at all. And I think he did the same. He did the right thing when he replaced McCarthy for not obeying his orders.
Mm-hmm.
That's what a president's supposed to do.
Yeah. And then what year were you discharged?
Janie?
1945,
Yeah.
but 46 January, you still had a little leave coming.
Yeah. I had 105 consecutive days of leave coming because there never no place to go, so it just kept building up. And that over 3 months' pay came in real handy when I got out of the service.
What was your rank when you left the service?
I was a captain and had enough time to draw major's pay. Had the right spec number. Had a chance to stay in the service, but it wasn't for me.
When you were going to Cole College, what was your ambition? What did you want to do with your life?
Well,
other than serving a term for Uncle Sam?
Really, I was interested in sports, but senior year in high school, I dislocated a knee, and that kind of ruined my chances as far as football was concerned at Cole. And Maury Eby was there. And I don't know, probably not before my senior year did I think about teaching, but I got, we had kind of an odd job at Linn. There was a new superintendent, new principal, new coach, and myself, and it was a cleanup job, and the superintendent's instructions were, you take care of the kids, I'll take care of the parents. And under those conditions, we got the school straightened up, but it took a half a year to do it.
During this time that you were following Frank around to the different camps while he was in service, had there been any children yet born to you?
In Texas, we had our first child in Austin, Texas.
What year was that?
1942, November 25th.
And what one would what was the child's name?
Karen.
Karen.
Our Karen.
And then was she the last one born while Frank was in service, or?
No, Ted was born before he went overseas, about 2 weeks before. I went back to Clarinda to live while he was on maneuvers just before finally going overseas. Mm-hmm. And we didn't even know, of course, when that would be, whether Ted would be born before he left or not. But he got a emergency, well, kind of emergency leave to come back and see Ted when he was born. He was 5 days old, I think, wasn't he, when you got to Clarinda. And they fix up their sign-outs and all, so they had more days. How many days did you have?
Ended up with 5.
5 days, yes. And so he got to see him before he went overseas.
What year was Clark born then?
that was Ted, of course, in 44.
44.
And then Clark was in 46, but that was here in Cedar Rapids after the war.
Okay. So after the war, and you come back to Cedar Rapids, did you continue to teach, or was you a full-time mom by that time?
Full-time mom. I didn't try to do any teaching at all. You see, I never accomplished it after I was married because Clarinda, Pearl Harbor came along.
Do you remember the blizzard, Armistice Day blizzard of 1941, December
Yes.
11th, or November 11th, excuse me?
I
Armistice
remember
Day
it, but
blizzard?
my husband really remembered it a little bit better, I think, because I think you were probably over at Glidden a little bit more in the path of that storm. I think our school let out that day, but I didn't have as many memories as he has.
I thought you were relating a story, and maybe it wasn't the Armistice Day blizzard, but it was right near then when you got hung up in a schoolhouse.
That was January 1st, New Year's Day, 1942, right after Pearl Harbor, and before we went to California in February. Yes, that was a horrible blizzard. And we left Cedar Rapids at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, or 3 o'clock, left my mother's. And at the Belle Plaine corner, it was the snow had just got terrible when we got out of Cedar Rapids. It was just barely snowing in Cedar Rapids when we left. And we went into Belle Plaine and asked at the gas station if they thought we could get through to Traer. And they said if we could make the north-south county line.
Going into Dysart.
Going into Dysart.
Off of 30.
Off of 30. So we went out of Belle Plaine and had just started down the highway a little ways, and we came across an almost buried car across the highway. Jumped out, there was a snow shovel there and everything, but the car died. He couldn't get it started, so there was no use digging out. And we had noticed a schoolhouse just before we had been hung up with this car across the road. So he said, we can't stay in the car. I put on his pajamas, because all I had was galoshes, but I had a fur coat. And we had a little cotton Indian blanket. We held that up against the wind and walked along that highway toward the schoolhouse. We got there, the door was locked. He didn't want to break it down. He went around and felt the windows, and they were way high off the ground. But he was able to move the window up. They hadn't locked them, I guess, because they were so high. And he hoisted me up. I crawled in, let a chair down, and he crawled in. And there was wood and an old pot-bellied stove and a pail of frozen water, one wooden bench, one teacher's chair, and one desk, and all the rest, desks. And he went out and got more wood because he could get the door unlocked, you see, from inside. And we had to spend the night. It was 4 o'clock when we came upon that car, and there wasn't a soul anywhere, of course. And you had no communication possibilities or anything. So it was, 6 o'clock in the morning when you heard the snowplow, and you went out and they poured gas in the carburetor, was it? What did?
Yeah, give me a tow job.
And a tow job into
Got my car started.
Tama.
Yeah, we had to go clear into Tama and then take 63 into Traer. And of course, my folks wanted all the time. where we were.
They were just frantic because Mother had called to see if we got there okay. So the two families were just frantic, but there was nothing we could do.
This was January 1st of 42?
Yes.
I hope the rest of your year went better then.
Well, I don't know. We went to California, stayed 1 month, and went to Columbus, Georgia.
Okay, so
We were there 3 months.
Frank, after service, did you go back to teaching,
I went
coaching?
back to teaching, and I taught a year and a half in Mount Vernon. And I was very lucky to be able to get a job in the middle of the year. It's kind of a long story as to how I got the job, but the interesting part was when I got a job in Marion. Mr. Vernon was the superintendent there, and he asked me how much money I wanted, and I said $3,000. And he says, "What's the least you'll take?" And I said $3,000. And I taught the full schedule, had charge of the hot lunch program, drove the school bus. And so I earned my $3,000. But that, to me, is an interesting story, and it's true.
Yeah.
But since then, salaries kept going up. But since I quit teaching in '79, I think probably $21,000 was the most I ever made. At the top of the salary schedule with a master's degree, now a beginning school teacher starts at more than that.
What were you teaching at these different schools, Frank?
I was teaching math, coaching football and basketball.
What was your favorite job? Of all the different places you taught, what was your favorite?
I enjoyed coaching football more than anything else, but during the time I was coaching in Marion for 5 years, we had fantastic basketball teams, and Mr. Hippel, who is now dead, was the head coach, and I happened to win the conference 1 year. In fact, I won it 5 years in a row, but I had what would you call it?
A plaque?
A plaque that Marion got rid of somewhere or other, and I hadn't got hold of it. And I ended up giving it to a kid that I had in 1952 in Florida. His name was Russ Seeks, and he came in and visited me. And to me, as a teacher, that meant an awful lot. He was here for an anniversary, and he showed up and was telling me how he appreciated the plaque that I sent him.
In your younger years, you had a camper.
Yes.
That you had resurrected from a older one. Frank, were you a avid camper, you and the family?
Yes. Even in our days before we were married, we went on lots of picnics. That was a cheap entertainment, and we enjoyed camping very much.
What is this you're showing us?
This is a trailer that I overhauled. We had bought an old National trailer, and I tore it down to the frame and built this one.
And did you ever have the opportunity to take this up to Minnesota?
Every summer, we'd go up there, and when I was getting my master's degree, sometimes it'd only be for 2 or 3 weeks, but we were able to put it in a campground, and it cost us, I think, $2.50 a week. And I managed it for 1 or 2 years, and my pay was free camping.
Jane, who is the, this is your family, of course, and their names?
Karen, Ted, and Clark.
Ted is the one in the middle.
Yes.
Clark.
Clark.
Oh, Clark is in the middle.
And did your children enjoy camping?
Oh, they loved it. They loved it.
You have another picture here. Clark is the boy in the center. Ted was the oldest. Clark must have been quite a bit taller than Ted was.
Oh, but don't you see? He's standing on a stool. He's got to be right up there with his brother.
Very nice. You have another picture here. And this is a picture of the children in the bunks in the camper that Frank had installed in there.
That's right. They each had their own reading lamp.
Can you remember who was on the top bunk? Which one of the children?
Was it to Karen?
No, Karen's in the middle bunk.
Oh,
Yeah.
I don't even remember which one.
Frank helps out.
Yeah, Clark's on the top.
Clark's on the top,
Yeah.
and Karen, and
In the
then
middle.
Ted's down on the bottom.
There's Clark on top again.
Yep.
And there was enough room in that camper to accommodate a kitchenette and bunks, and
Yes.
you must have had to put quite a bit of thought into that.
It just so happened that I got the plans for building a trailer out of Popper Mechanics, and it gave me the idea how to do the framework, which was the important part. And
Very
it
nice.
ended up doing a very good job for
Very,
us.
very nice. I had almost forgot, Jane. Your family had a old family tradition.
Oh, yes. We had a raw round robin that went on a regular schedule. And this is one of the envelopes that was made, printed by Dave Elder in Washington, Iowa, for the robins to use. We packed that full of letters. Everybody tried to contribute a letter, and there was a regular schedule inside that we went by to know whom to send it to next.
Is that still continued today?
Oh, yes, definitely.
What year do you suppose that started, that tradition?
Well, I think it was way before I was born in 1919.
Did you faithfully contribute to it every year as it come around?
For a long time, but we got so busy with the war, that upset everything.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, we were so busy since then that I didn't pick this up again until this year. I'm starting to contribute because Dave Elder, a cousin who just died in Washington, Iowa, was the only other person living in Iowa to contribute to this.
Do you think this is something that your children or your grandchildren will continue in years to come?
I hope so. Mm-hmm.
This picture is a picture of your daughter Karen,
Yes, that's right.
and who is the? Is that your?
That's my grandmother with whom I lived for all those years from,
Grandma Rawl.
yes, Grandma Rawl, Grandma Flo Rawl. And this is her first great-grandchild. I was her first grandchild. My father was her firstborn. And so it went down through to Karen's generation, and she had a daughter while my grandmother was still living, so that was a great granddaughter that she actually got to hold. But this was Karen's wedding, and my grandmother had 4 boys and never had a girl. So I broke the tradition, and my daughter broke the tradition.
A lovely story. This camper you constructed, where was your most enjoyable place to take it?
Well, we parked at Akeley, Minnesota city campground, and for several years our family went there every summer. But then they decided that it didn't meet the sanitary requirements and they were going to close it. So we were looking for a piece of property to buy, and your next picture is going to show the place that we purchased.
Is that a hand painting of the cabin, Frank?
This is a hand painting. It was painted by art teacher at Franklin.
Harriet Souter.
Yeah.
And was that the way it looked, or was it just a small?
No, it wasn't even red. I don't think it was 24-foot square. It did not have a shower. It had a stool, and that was all.
Lavatory.
So we had to take our baths in the lake.
How many years did you own that, or do you still own it?
We bought it in 1963, and that's the way it looked when we turned it over to our kids.
Mm-hmm. Was this picture taken at the campground, Jane?
Yes, it was, and it was 10:15 at night. Still shows up that way. The lake is in the background there,
And
these are the 5 grandchildren. Our
And
5 grandchildren.
who do they belong to?
The one standing and the one on the right-hand side belong to our daughter Karen. The boy in the center sitting belongs to Ted, and the girl by him sitting in white is Holly, Clark's daughter, and the next one is Aaron, Clark's son.
Those memories will stick with them the rest of their life.
Yes.
While the camera's pointed in that direction, Frank, is that some of your handiwork, that
Yes.
Afghan, you call it?
I've had a hobby the last 10, 15 years, I guess, of making Afghans. And my friends who have reached their 50th wedding anniversary all get an Afghan. And I've given 2 away this summer, and it's been a fun project.
Great hobby.
I've made, I think, over 80 of them.
Yeah.
And,
Keeps your fingers busy at night.
yeah.
Very nice, very nice. Frank, in continuing with your teaching career, what other jobs or
Well,
positions?
spending 5 years at Marion, I then went to Cedar Rapids, Roosevelt, and taught until 1979. So, something like 28 years.
You participated in an anniversary at Kingston Stadium this year, is that correct?
Yes, this past fall, they had a celebration of 50th anniversary of Kingston Stadium, and asked that those who participated in football were invited. And of course, this was 1952, and of the 6 coaches that Roosevelt had, there was only 3 living. And the interesting part was that all these people that were there were your age or more, and some of them looked a little worse than I do. But you see, they would all be 65, 66, 67, and it was an interesting session.
Did you retire when you was at the Roosevelt job?
Yes, I retired in 1979.
1979.
And I've had 80, actually it'd be about 23 years of
Retirement.
good retirement, spending it up at the lake, and we were able to turn our property over to our children.
It didn't get any better. Jane, did you return to teaching after the children got older?
Yes, I waited until the youngest, Clark, started 7th grade. And then I had to renew my license, of course. I taught only 1 year on that license before the war. Then when I was just finishing those courses at Coe, Walter Shupp, the county superintendent of schools, evidently called Coe and asked if they had anybody who could possibly teach home economics for Palo High School, because the school had fired the home economics teacher. And I had a very good course at Coe in 1936 in clothing and sewing, and I had done a lot of my necessary credits to renew my license in the home ec field, because I had heard they needed teachers so badly. So they said they had me ready to take the job, and I had an interview with the superintendent, and he wanted me to teach chemistry, but I said I just had my good high school chemistry course, and I wouldn't be rated by the state able to teach, so I didn't want to interfere with that, and I taught a business course instead.
Mm-hmm. And then when you retired from teaching, where were you teaching at that time?
Oh, well, years elapsed.
Later.
You see,
yeah.
The year and a half that I taught at Palo was just the start of my return to teaching.
Mm-hmm.
And I taught for the Cedar Rapids Schools night school at New Washington High for 3 years, until Kirkwood was going to take that night school over. Then I was, at that time, along with the night school teaching, I was doing some substitute teaching in Linn, Marion, and Cedar Rapids, and taking my courses in the winter, a few courses in the winter toward my master's, and in the summer, up at the lake, I was driving to Bemidji to get my regular courses. So at the end, when I had my 1963 master's degree, I did go to McKinley and teach for a year. And then I had a chance to teach at Mount Mercy College in the education, first in the English department for 3 years, and as part-time. And then I went into full-time and became a media head, and also taught 1 course in education and 2 courses in the English department.
What year did you retire then?
In 1961.
Jane, you want to tell us about your children? The first one is Karen.
Yes, our daughter was born first, and her education was at Bemidji State, and she married a Cedar Rapids boy who happened to be going there, and they had 2 children. They have 2 children, Tamara Lindbergh and Angie Lee.
Mm-hmm. Did she follow your love of teaching? Or?
Yes, she taught.
Mm-hmm.
She taught quite a few years, but her husband now is deceased.
Mm-hmm. And the next one, the center one, is
Ted, and he joined the police, Cedar Rapids police force, and he was on the force for 31 years.
And you retired from the police force? And
Yes, he retired about
3 years ago.
3 years or 4 years ago.
Well, do they
children?
And he has 1 child. He was divorced, but he has the 1 child, Brian.
Mm-hmm. Do they still live in Cedar Rapids?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But Karen lives in Minnesota yet.
And the
last one is Clark, and he, of course, lives here in Cedar Rapids, and he started the Teleconnect in the McLeod, USA. And they have 2 children, Aaron McLeod and Holly Gilliland. And Holly lives in Des Moines. Aaron lives in Chicago.
The angle good back.
Go ahead.
And these are the grandchildren?
Yes, they
Great
are.
grandchildren.
Great-grandchildren.
Great grandchildren.
And Aaron and Rachel Lee are Angie Lee's children. And Morgan and Erica are Tammy and Mark Berg's children. And Madison and a brand new baby brother born today are Holly and Mary's children. Madison, and his name is the new baby's name is Maxwell Clark Gilliland. And this boy is Ted's grandchild, Brian's son, and his name is Austin McLeod, and this is his new baby brother this year, born in August, and his name is Jacob David McLeod.
Very nice. With your large family, do you have the chance to have family reunions?
Oh yes, they have regular reunions, and the first one was back in the late 1800s, and they have a family history that they publish, I suppose it's every about 30 years or so. Anyway, we have 3 bound volumes now.
Do you ever have? Did you ever have family reunions at the cabin up to?
No, there wouldn't be
too
room.
far away,
and even the town doesn't have enough housing. We always take a place where we can be pretty much all together, like a whole bunch of cottages. Dunn's Farm in Michigan, we had all the cottages they have right there on the lake. And at Burr Oak State Park in Ohio, again, we had cabins, but we also had, some people had rooms in the hotel where we had all our meals. So it was still, we had all our meals together. And evenings together, and everybody gets into tennis or golf or shopping, sightseeing.
That's great.
We have all these activities.
That's great. So, after 2 of you retired, what did you take up as a mutual hobby, or if anything? What was your love of?
Right now, I used to do a lot of woodworking. I made cribbage boards. I made wood earrings. What else did I make?
Salt shakers
Salt
on the
and pepper
table.
shakers.
Were you avid cribbage players? Or card players?
Very much so during the war.
And up at the cabin, we had an old retired Navy man, and he and his wife, and we had
Tournaments.
Tournaments.
Women against the men.
and we played cribbage an awful lot then. And of course, they both passed away. That's probably part of our trouble right now, is that we're losing a lot of our friends.
Yes.
And we find that our hobby of dancing, we are associating with couples that are 15 and 20 years younger than we are, but with ballroom dancing, it mixes up very well.
Is this something? Is it an organization, or you just participate on your own? Or
Congenial 100 Dance Club is celebrating their 70th anniversary tomorrow, and
November 23rd it'll be.
We
November 23rd.
exchange dances a lot, and it's called Congenial, and way back, it used to be that you had to be able to dance, or they wouldn't okay you to belong to it.
How old is this club?
It's 70 years
Oh,
old.
I'm sorry, 70 years old.
Yeah.
And how long have you belonged to it?
Probably 33 or 4 years, and I think we are not age-wide, but as far as belonging, we are probably the oldest couple. And one job we have tomorrow will be welcoming all the people as they come in the door for the dance, and we have a very good dance band tomorrow night.
The name of it?
Congenial 100.
The band,
And right now,
the band?
we are a little over 100. We have about 55 couples.
And the band we have tomorrow night is Ken Paulson's band from Davenport.
And that's the same band we had for our 60th wedding anniversary.
Is this just a local group, or is this national?
No, it's local, and the members, we have a lot of members from Iowa City and Monticello.
We have a couple from them.
all around this area, but Iowa City probably has maybe a third of them are from Iowa City.
What's the age of the most senior couple in your group?
That other couple is...
We have one couple that he happens to be 87 years old, and it's an interesting thing. He was a professor at University of Iowa, and we have a doctor and a dentist that took courses under him. And it's very interesting, but I'm telling you, he dances every dance. He's in excellent condition.
Does your bad knee affect your dancing?
Right now it does, but primarily we had it repaired so we could dance a little more, and right now we seem to kind of pick the slower pieces, and we have hopes of being able to get back in full swing again.
What's your favorite to dance to? What tune?
Mine is a rumba. We enjoy rumba and waltzes more than anything else.
What waltz?
Josephine
Josephine
is the dance that you can rumba to, or I suppose, but we usually foxtrot to it, don't we?
Yeah.
And
we've taken lessons probably the last
at least
7 or 8 years.
yeah.
We take a private lesson every week until I have my knee worked on, and we're going to get back into the swing after Christmas.
You find this keeps you young at heart?
Yes.
And as I say, we get a chance to associate with younger people.
Yes.
Because most people our ages are not able to dance, or maybe don't want to dance. Yeah. And we find that most of it, we have several couples our age that just don't know they just don't dance anymore.
Helps you keep a positive attitude.
Yes.
Yeah. And you had mentioned bridge earlier. Did you pursue that hobby after retirement?
Very much so, and even more so, I think, now that we're older, because it keeps our minds really active, planning and plotting in bridge, because there's a lot of strategy you can use in bridge, you know.
Do you have quite a group that you...
Not a group, except for the Congregational Church has a little tournament, you know. It has just 5 couples in each division, 10 couples in all, and each division just plays 4 games, you know, 4 evenings, I should say, not games, but 4 evenings. So it isn't a whole lot, but it is a chance to play with other people.
Get out and mingle.
And we have a lot of our other friends who have always played bridge. So we just play two couples of us.
We pay $20 to play in it, and I think the church gets about $160 of the money, and we get a first and second prize, and that's it.
Yeah.
And,
Unless the two of you have any other things you want to put on this tape, the Linn County Historical Society, the Cedar Rapids History Center would like to thank you both very much for sharing your memories with us.
Well, it was a pleasure.
you mentioned something the last time you were here about the History Center has a problem financially. And is there any way that the city can forgive taxes for an institution like that, say the building belonged to the city or something like some of the parks they have, or the farm that they operate, and
I don't know, Frank, but if you have any solutions or any ideas, I'm sure the History Center, because we are strapped for money.
well, it seems to me that an institution as important as that there ought to be some way that they shouldn't have to pay.
Well, of course, they rent the property, don't they? Or do they have it leased?
No, we have it leased, but
and then you are responsible for taxes.
we have a large
Well,
mortgage.
who does it belong to? I mean, who are they leasing it from?
That I am not
Yeah.
sure.
We're just volunteers.
Yeah, we're just
Yeah.
volunteers. Thank you
bet.
very much to the two of you.